every time there's a high state of flux between Spain and the United Kingdom, the border closes, and it becomes most difficult. And there's queues of cars, mostly of people from Spain wanting to come to work in Gibraltar. So but most of the time we have something that works and works well. But as you said, it's not about movement of goods necessarily across the border, it's more about the movement of people. And obviously in Northern Ireland we have a large number of people who traverse the border, both sides, coming across from Northern Ireland to the Republic, from the Republic to Northern Ireland to work. And we want to make sure that that can continue. So I'm very keen to know just how those workers, do they have passes, do they have passport stoppages and controls, or do they go with their permit to work, or what way does it work? And the other thing which is very important, because obviously Gibraltar is a place where people want to go and enjoy the tourism facilities and things that take place there, both sides of course. So for us, the seamless border that we have at the moment would be the most important one. I'm always very conscious, Mr. Chairman, of we do not want in Northern Ireland to have a busload of people from the Republic stuck at Dundalk in a bus for half an hour to get across the border. But see if that happens, they won't come. We won't have tourists travelling across the border. So how do you have that transfer of tourists, for instance, who are coming into Gibraltar to see the facilities and the wonderful place that you have? So those are questions. I just want to understand better how the workers traverse the border and how that can happen quickly. But more importantly, for tourism for us in Northern Ireland is a critical factor. We want to grow it, and we can't grow it if we've got a border it's not seamless.
Thank you for the opportunity to explain what happens every morning at the Gibraltar-Spain frontier, and then in the evening as people go back, because it is, I think, one of the most important issues for us, and I think it will help inform how things may develop in the future and what the key ingredients to making it work will be. And if I may start with that, the key ingredient to making anything work at the frontier is goodwill and then resources. We can then layer on top of that the legal regime, but if you haven't got goodwill and you haven't got the resources, then whatever legal regime you have, it's not going to work. So to give you an example of the numbers, and taking you now to the photograph that you have, you see the number 1 towards the top left of that map. That is the area in Spain where people start to access the secure zone before they reach the frontier. You'll see a row of cars, so there the Spaniards operate one row, sometimes two, but not often, of cars coming into Gibraltar, and to the left of that, as you're looking at it, will be the flow of pedestrians coming into Gibraltar. In the mornings, between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning, we will receive approximately 13,000 people every day crossing that bottleneck. They will be required, if they are EU citizens, to come into Gibraltar with either an identity card, a valid identity card, or a passport. Spain operates some of the machines that you may have seen at Heathrow Airport installed recently at that area, and also a human check. And very often, people are not required to use the machines and are subject only to the human check as they walk through the frontier. I know nothing else about what technology Spain may be operating at that frontier. In vehicles, people are required to show their passports or identity cards to guards at point 4 and at point 5. Gibraltar Customs, so point 4 is Gibraltar Border and Immigration, and point 5 is Gibraltar Customs. Right. Now, in the context of how we do our immigration, in the morning it would be impossible for 13,000 people to put their passports in a scanner, even if the scanner only took 5 seconds and never failed, and for us to have people not having to queue and be like, however many scanners, I don't think we've got enough room in 0.75 miles to set up enough scanners for people to get through in those numbers at that time of the morning. So what we operate, and I'll give you this detail in writing so that members have it after today's session, we operate a complex system of technological measures at the frontier so that we are able to have a cursory human check backed up by technological solutions that will flash up to us anybody coming into Gibraltar who is on a known or is wanted on an Interpol or UK or Gibraltar site. So we have 15 9K resolution cameras at the entry point. We have 17 automatic number plate recognition cameras operating at between points 4 and points 5, and all of those are constantly checked against databases in case a number plate comes up of a vehicle that is identified as being stolen or otherwise wanted. We therefore are able to allow people to flow quickly through this area, this bottleneck, and the human interaction will be there in the event that the individual who is on duty that day sees something that concerns him, and humans are always better than machines at spotting suspicious behavior, or at least I should say, until now, have been better than machines at spotting suspicious behavior. And then beyond the beyond the immigration officer, who is that human check of immigration documents, there lies Gibraltar Customs also for pedestrians, and they have an opportunity of observing people and deciding whether they want to take them to one side. Now, that means that we are able to get people into Gibraltar and to their places of work by 9:30, and then the next important moment for us is the arrival of tourists. So once people have got to their place of work, we start to see a flow of coaches coming into Gibraltar, the 50-seater coaches, which will access Gibraltar through the same artery. Police officers from the Spanish sides will usually go into the coach to quickly check people aboard the coach, and Gibraltar will do the same thing. Very often we have people who are coming into Gibraltar on coaches who are not European citizens, and there's a visa waiver scheme in place if those individuals have Schengen multiple entry visas.
How long does that process take for the buses?
Well, for the buses, I don't think it takes more than 2 to 3 minutes to clear each bus. It doesn't take longer than that. This is the good news story that I'm telling you. This is the arrival into Gibraltar now. It's easier to get them into Gibraltar because they're exiting Spain. Spain has immigration controls on exit, but they're not stringent. Once we've got all those into Gibraltar, the issue is how do we get them out again during the course of the day. Now, you said in your introduction that when there are difficulties between Gibraltar and Spain, or between the United Kingdom and Spain, they'll close the border. Well, they haven't closed the border since 1982 for pedestrians, and it opened in 84 for vehicles. But they have almost closed the border by making the checks so stringent at times that one car might get through every 5 minutes in the afternoon. Now, when you have the flow that I've described in the morning, seeking to get out of Gibraltar in the evening, and knowing the geography of Gibraltar as you will, this can cause utter gridlock in Gibraltar.
One very quick on the numbers of pedestrians that you want to see. Is this like a spot check? Is that what you do, or do you have the cameras similar on pedestrians coming through as you have in cars coming through? It's a very quick one.
We have cameras on all pedestrians coming through, and the technology will tell us very quickly if that person was of interest. And the cameras continue beyond the frontier, so we know where they are in case we get something flagged up later, in good time that we'd be able to control them.
I've listened very carefully to what you have said, and it is clear that your border controls are highly dependent upon technology, upon cameras. Very technical, in fact you say complex technological solutions have been applied. Now, the UK government, a number of government ministers, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has made it quite clear that cameras on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland would be, quote, and I'm quoting him, legitimate targets for those who don't want Brexit. We do have dissident Republicans along the border and elsewhere, unfortunately, throughout Northern Ireland. The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland has already made it quite clear to this committee that there will be no cameras, there will be no physical infrastructure. No physical infrastructure. Those words have been repeated by the Prime Minister. So in that context, how do you imagine the UK can take back control of the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, which is ruled out cameras and a physical infrastructure, unlike Gibraltar? Can you suggest some solutions?
Well, I don't know enough about the technology they may have in mind if they don't have cameras in mind. I don't have access to satellite imagery, for example, but they might.
No, we haven't heard that mentioned. That's a good suggestion.
I am literally making it up as I go along. I'll be very honest with you, because I can only tell you about the technology that we've deployed.
Absolutely.
And ours was Checkpoint Charlie, and therefore it is easier to see and small enough to control in the context of that crossing point. But I'm not able to conject an answer to what technology may or may not be available, or what other alternatives may be available if you're not using the technology that we're using. I can only tell you about the technology that we have deployed.
The border, whether it's a hard Brexit or not, that for Gibraltar and Spain, the continuation will be the high reliance upon cameras, which we know have been ruled out in Northern Ireland, and also, was I right in hearing you say that Gibraltar police actually board the coaches that come into Spain? So you regularly have police officers who board coaches at the border.
Gibraltar immigration authorities. We don't do that through our police, but there is a police presence at the frontier for security purposes, but they don't deal with immigration issues, although every police officer retains the power to deal with an immigration issue, of course. We have a force called it's called the Borders and Coast Guard Agency, and they are the ones who deal with accessing these coaches and dealing with passport controls, etc. They used to be called Security and Immigration, which in my head still pops up, but it's the Borders and Coast Guard Agency. And
they regularly, frequently board coaches, do they?
On a daily basis, so that we're able. I mean, a coach is one of the more difficult things to monitor with a camera. So we can get a photograph of its number plate, but we can't see inside.
Oh, I agree entirely. I just think, in fact, it would be very, very high risk for UK border officials, the PSNI, HMRC, to stand along the border in the Republic of Ireland, between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland going forward. But I'm very grateful to you for your evidence. It just highlights the difficulties that we will have achieving a frictionless border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.